Hello, hi, great to see you. Another video on Thunderhawk Coaching. I'm Will. Great to see you. Cool. So, today we're going to talk about why just doing it doesn't work. So, something I've heard a lot when a lot of clients have said to me, how do I do this goal or do that goal? Why can't I make myself do this? I should do this. I should do that. I should just do it. Just doing it doesn't work. And I'm going to tell you why. Because just doing it requires you to push through a lot of negative emotion. And when we think about building habits, engaging with things, being somebody that consistently shows up for certain things, something I think about a lot is emotional inertia. So what I mean by that is I think of here's your task. Between you and the task or habit, there's a big speed bump, okay? Big speed bump. So the size of that speed bump is the inertia that it takes for you to get into a task, okay? So if you think about a task and you think it might just be laundry, for example, you think, I want to do the laundry, I should do the laundry, okay? When you look at the laundry, you think about doing it, you're going to be hitting to what feels like a wall, okay? Oh, I don't know if I want to do that now. Maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm sleepy. Oh, why should I do the laundry? I could just do this, or don't even think about it, right? There could be a little bit of shame at play there, right? So something I really notice when we think about getting into tasks, doing things, if we have a big expectation of what we should be, who we should be, right? That makes the speed bump bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And makes it more effort to get into the task. So you might have noticed this yourself, right? When there's external motivation, when somebody's saying, hey, you have to do this, I'm making you do this, then you might be able to do it, right? You could do it, right? Because somebody else is essentially pushing you over the speed bump, okay? But when you leave that task, you might feel a lot of resentment, right? If you're anything like me, you might feel a bit of resentment because you're I don't want to do that, but I was made to do that. So what we need to think about here is how can we reduce the inertia, right? So elaborate a little bit on that inertia, especially when we're trying to get into the task is the hardest part. And then when you're in the task itself, it's a bit easier, right? And you might be well, just starting is hard, but how do I keep doing this? So how do we reduce the inertia, right? Really good question. If you're thinking that to yourself, how do I reduce the inertia? So what you want to do here when you think about the inertia is how does doing this task contribute to the bigger picture of me, of my why? And you might not know what that is. And we've got coaching to help with that. If you want to learn more about that, check the description. But it's really important to understand what the hell you're doing, right? Ask yourself this question, what am I doing, right? And it can be really hard to know what that answer is, right? So when we think about doing a task we don't like, first of all, we've got to understand where we're at. What are we feeling? Why are we where we're at? So I call this the stock take phase, okay? We need to figure out who you are as a human, what you care about, how you got here, why you even engage in the coping mechanisms you might be engaging with, what they're doing for you, how this started as an inception point, and then how are they helping you cope with other needs that might not be met, right? You need to explore that, because if we don't understand that, then you can't just do anything, because you might actually have a really good reason for not wanting to start anything at all, right? There might have been some really key points in your life where you felt a degree of rejection or growing rejection over time. And that's normal and understandable, especially if you're neurodiverse. Rejection can be felt really intensely if you have, ADHD, autism, etc. So really taking stock of where you're at is super important to understand, hey, I am where I'm at, because I think part of that process is understanding and accepting where you're at, okay? And in my experience, that's been a lot of therapy for me, to understand why I'm at, why I'm where I'm at, and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. As I mentioned Weber sketch today about kind of bad therapy. And in my opinion, the step beyond that is, when you've got the understanding, then we need to like figure out like how we push a little bit out of that circle of comfort. And in that, you're going to potentially feel like it's not fast enough, it's not enough. I feel shame because I'm not all the way over here yet. I'm not all the way over there. Those feelings are going to happen. We need to like look at those, understand where those are coming from, right? And when you can like look at that and understand that a bit more, then we're getting a bit more of the full picture of like where the inertia is coming from. Okay, so if you like a neurodiverse in some ways, it might be that you're like literally overwhelmed and overstimulated by doing household chores, right? That's understandable. Like, I can empathize with that. But then we need to like think about adaptations, right? We need to think about like, if you have a clean house, what happens afterwards? Okay, so things are going to happen. There's going to be discomfort in life. There's going to be overwhelm. There's going to be stress. There's going to be anger, sadness, grief, shame. There will be joy as well. But like, in my opinion, to be slightly Buddhist, suffering is kind of one of the only guaranteed things in life. So how can we suffer for a reason? And that's why the why is really important. So if you don't have a why, right? Like, I really think about this when I think about joining the forces. A lot of people love joining the army and the forces. I think a huge benefit that comes out of that is that there's a really clear reason for doing things. There's very clear why. We are serving our country, whatever country that is, right? We are being patriotic. We are serving this idea that our country is valuable. We have values that we care about, and we should uphold them or reinforce them. Okay? So when you don't have a clear why, again, this causes a lot of challenges. But a why, how do you find a why? This is going to be the hard part, right? A big part of finding a why is experiencing. So you need to like actually go out into the world and do things, okay? So you need to fail. You need to try new things. The more XP you can gain in the world and more emotive XP you can gain from doing anything. You could be scooping poo in a field. You could be being a labourer on a construction site. You could wipe old people's bums. Whatever. All of this is really valuable experience to help you build up a why, because you're going to get like concrete information. So your anxious brain's going to be like, but I already know what that's going to look like. I already know how I'm going to feel like that. So why bother doing it? But there's something that we learn and experience that our anxious brain cannot perceive, right? We gain a way higher resolution image of like what that's like for us. So the anxious mind's going to be like, don't do that. That's bad. Right, that's bad. We're putting ourselves through distress. We're putting ourselves through like challenging things that suck, and that's true. But then when you like do it, and you prove to yourself you can handle discomfort, there's a degree of confidence that can come from that, right? And this is the reframe I want to offer you all today. When we think about doing things, is that like experiencing and improving our resilience to the world and the challenges that come with it are immensely valuable. Because regardless of what kind of why lands for us, whatever that looks like, we need to be the type of person that can meet that challenge. And we can only work on that through experiences we don't have a lot of data on and our anxious mind doesn't want to engage with. So when you think about doing something, think about engaging with it. Your anxious mind's going to be like, hey, going to the store, I'm really socially anxious, I'm going to have to talk to somebody, it's going to be awkward. What's going to come after that? You're going to feel really uncomfortable. You're going to feel anxious, you might feel guilty, you might feel full of shame. Those feelings are valid and real. But what comes after those feelings? Okay, so can you regulate those feelings? Can you navigate those feelings? Can you ride those waves? You might feel like you can't. Also super valid. That's why like having support's really important to like navigate these feelings. But I think you'd be surprised with what you can do. Your comfort circle is going to want you to stay exactly where you are, right? You might have super valid and legitimate reasons for being where you are. But also, I got an inkling that, like, you click this video because you want to do something. You don't just want to stay where you are. So, in my opinion, you need to try something. And something is always infinitely more valuable than whatever your anxious brain's going to churn out. So, in summary, figure out where you're at right now. Figure out what that inertia is, that emotive inertia that gets in the way for you. Like, what happens when you think about the task? What's going to happen after? And just go through the steps. Play the tape all the way through. Little tidbit from addiction psychology. Play the tape through. How are you going to feel through the experience and at the end of the experience? Is that something you can handle and manage? Is that something you can experience, do you feel? And if not, that's also really interesting to explore. So play the tape through. And then when you understand what might happen, then the reframe it is any experience is valuable experience. It is a cognitive rep. You are lifting weight for your mind. This is important, right? If we think about getting strong in any capacity physically, we all accept that we need to consistently do some kind of physical effort. But also, like, something's better than nothing. Muscle growth happens if you do something, but nothing happens if you do nothing, right? Muscles will grow somehow. So, like, find something that's, like, a little different, but also a little bit comfortable for you. And, like, what that could look like specifically, I recommend you explore that with somebody, maybe me, maybe somebody else, but it can be hard to tease that stuff out. So that's why just doing it doesn't work. This is Thunder Hawk Coaching. I've been Will. You've been wonderful. I'm going to shoot, but good luck with doing it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.